Hello, and welcome to the PRSS 118 Introduction to Provider and MCO Delegate Management Training session. During this session, we'll show you how to set up delegate role assignments in the Provider or MCO portal. The process in each portal is similar. The role assignments and portal used are the main difference between the two processes. If you have not attended PRSS 111, Introduction to Provider Enrollment, or PRSS 120, Introduction to Provider Portal, you may want to attend those sessions for foundational information. A helpful resource for this session would be the Provider Portal User Guide, which can be found on the Provider Training page. Our agenda for this session will be adding a delegate and managing delegate role assignments, and then we'll do a brief closing. Learning objectives will be to explain the purpose of setting up delegate role assignments and identify where to manage delegate information. First, we will cover adding a delegate. We will add an unregistered delegate, and then we will add a registered delegate. An unregistered delegate is a delegate that is not known to the system, not working for a provider at any location. A registered delegate is a delegate that is known to the system and may be working at another location or for another provider. There are various roles that can be assigned to staff within the portal, so we're going to take a look at these now. If you are the provider, you have a few options depending on the level of control you want over the information and tasks performed on your behalf. If you are an individual provider, you can directly assign and manage delegates or staff to perform tasks such as submitting claims on your behalf. If you don't want to manage these delegates or the designated staff yourself, you can assign a delegate administrator to manage them on your behalf. These administrators can also perform the tasks that delegates do. If you are an individual provider within a group of providers, which would be this last diagram, you have the option to assign an authorized administrator who will maintain all your provider account information and tasks. During enrollment, this provider type has the choice to opt out of portal access and rely solely on that administrator for all updates and processing of tasks. For individual within a group providers who want to opt out of PRSS access, see our PRSS 111 Introduction to Provider Enrollment course for more details. Now, we want to keep these roles in mind because the authorized administrator and delegates who work on behalf of more than one provider will see something slightly different when they log into the portal. Now, let's see what the provider portal looks like. You will always start at the secure MES login page. On the MES login page, you will enter your credentials, your username and your password, and then you're going to click Sign In. On the MES landing page, you're going to scroll to the bottom of the page where you will see the provider management tile. At the top right of this tile, you're going to notice a little blue arrow. You click on that blue arrow and it will open the provider management tile and you will see the PRSS link. And this will take you to the home page. Before we go into the training environment and show you the steps, I do want to introduce some definitions and concepts used in this system to manage staff access. The Adding Delegates feature allows you the ability to give portal access to your clerical and administrative staff to support daily operations. Giving delegate administrator rights allows the enrollment of your staff, and security functions control what administrative functions a staff member can perform. The system divides the process of adding security functions and delegate administrative rights by service location into 3 entry options shown here. The first option is that you can assign a delegate for all locations with all security functions, and you can also assign the delegate administration rights here. The second option, you can assign a delegate with specific security functions to all locations. And then our third option is that you can assign the delegate, or remember this can also be called your staff, to select service locations with specific security functions and with or without delegate administrative rights by the specific service location. So now we're going to go into the TRN or the training environment to see how this is done in the system. After your initial VA Medicaid enrollment is approved, your profile information is managed through the provider portal. In order for your staff to access the provider portal, you will need to add them as an unregistered delegate. The following demo will show you the steps. Remember, if you are an individual within a group and you affiliated your group in the enrollment application and named the group as the authorized administrator, you may not have access to this portal. If this is the case, your group will manage your profile and delegates, and for changes, you will have to contact your group. So now let's log into the training environment as a provider. When you log into your account, you will begin at the Switch Provider page if you are an authorized administrator for an individual within a group or OPR. Note that it asks, do you want to manage the affiliations associated to your group or facility? If you wish to manage your group or facility information, you're going to select no. If you would select yes if you wish to manage the individual within a group or OPR information for which the group or facility is the authorized administrator. We want to add delegates to our Advanced Telepsychiatry Incorporated group, and you'll note this in the information bar up here. We are logged in as Advanced Telepsychiatry Incorporated. So we're going to leave the defaulted selection at no. So we will be manage our delegates for Advanced Telepsychiatry. So we're going to come up to the navigation menu. We're going to click on Maintenance, and then we'll use the drop down to find Manage Delegates. So we select Manage Delegates. And you notice we have two buttons on this page. We are at the Delegates information page. We have the Add Unregistered Delegate and we have the Add Registered Delegate buttons. Remember, an unregistered delegate is a delegate that is not known to the system. So we're going to begin here for our delegate or our staff member. So we select the Add Unregistered Delegate button. This delegate is unknown to the system, not working for another provider or service location. So we complete the unregistered delegate profile information when this window pops up. So we're going to add a last name. We're going to add Jones. First name, Alec. And then we have to complete any field that has an asterisk marked on it. So we will add our email address, our birth date, and the last four of our social. Then we add a phone number. We select a primary language. So we're going to select from this drop down right here. When we click on that, it gives us a drop down of primary language. We also want you to note that there is an active checkbox up here. The active checkbox at the top of the window is what indicates whether the delegate can work on the provider's behalf. If this checkbox is not selected, the delegate cannot, or the delegate or staff member cannot work for the provider at any location. So we always want to make sure that our checkbox, our active checkbox, is selected here. When creating an unregistered delegate, we want to make sure that we are assigning all locations and all functions that you intend for this delegate or staff member to be able to fulfill work for our provider. This will ensure that our delegate administrator or staff member won't have to go back in and add service locations later. So when we look at our add options down below, this is the information that we looked at earlier. We can assign all service locations and security functions. We can assign all service locations, and assign selected security functions, which brings us available and selected function boxes. Or we can go down to the last selection and select the service locations and security functions for our delegates to work on behalf of our provider, which will then bring us a list of service locations and then our available functions and our selected function box. So let's go back up to the top and select the assign all service locations and security functions. When we use this selection, we are assigning our delegate or staff member to all of our provider service locations with all security functions. If we select the Delegate Administrator checkbox, this also assigns our delegate or staff member to all service locations with all security functions and the ability to add and maintain other delegates. So let's look at our next selection. If we select Assign All Service Locations and Assign Selected Security Functions, this means our delegate or staff member is going to be assigned to all of our provider service locations. But now we have the Available Functions box down here and the Selected Functions box. When you first come to this, your Selected Function box will be empty. When you're adding a new delegate or staff member, and you would simply select by clicking on a function in the available functions box. I can select control on my keyboard and I can then select another function. These are our security or work functions. And then I use the arrow in the middle. The single arrow will move those available functions over to selected functions. So now we have selected these two functions for our delegate or staff member to work on behalf of our provider. We can use the double arrows to move everything over at once from available to selected, or we can move all of those selected functions back over. You also notice when I hover over a function, it gives me a little bit of a description of that function. Okay, so let's say we go down and we want to select the service locations, the specific service locations, and the specific security functions for this delegate or staff member to work on behalf of our provider. So at this point, we can now make our delegate active at a specific location. We can then, once we make them active, we have to go down and select our security or work functions by clicking on those and using the arrow to move them from available to selected functions. Now you notice it also adds it to the security function at the top. When I make my delegate or staff member active at a service location, I also have to assign security functions at that service location. I can also make my delegate active at another service location, and I can set them as a delegate administrator by clicking this checkbox, and that will make them a delegate administrator at just that specific service location. So when I take my scroll up on my box, you notice that I have assigned Alec to Advanced Telepsychiatry 2727 Electric Road. I have made him active and I have assigned him resources search members. But then at the Advanced Telepsychiatry 3152 location, I have assigned Alec, I've made him active and assigned him as a delegate administrator, which assigns him all security functions at that service location. If I were to make Alec active at a location and not assign security functions, when I go down to the bottom of my screen and I click submit, it's going to give me an error message because I have not assigned any security functions at that location. Okay, so at this point, I have assigned Alec to 2 locations. At one location, he is a delegate administrator. At the other location, I've made him active with specific security functions. So I'll scroll down and I'll click submit here. Okay. At this point, when that unregistered delegate has been added, you're going to notice a message bar that tells us the add unregistered delegate was successfully saved. The unregistered delegate has now received emails to complete portal registration. The delegate cannot access the provider's information until registration is complete. Once the registration is complete, the delegate becomes a registered delegate and will be able to access the account from the Switch organization page when they log in. Now that we've added an unregistered delegate, let's go over and look at adding a registered delegate. So remember, a registered delegate is a delegate that's currently active working in the system for another provider at another service location. So this would be a registered delegate. So we select the Add Registered Delegate button, and we would need the relationship code from the delegate and the last name that is associated with this code. The relationship code is found on the delegates page under Maintenance and then Portal Profile Maintenance, and we'll point that out later. So we're going to add a Joni Davis. So let's add her last name in the last name box and the relationship code. And then we come down to the bottom right, we click Continue. When the last name and relationship code are validated by the system, the Add Registered Delegate window displays with the validated delegate information. So you notice Joni's first name, last name, and then her information, her relationship code. And again, this active checkbox that we want to make sure that Joni is active to work on behalf of our provider. We now have our 3 add options. We can either assign all service locations with all security functions and assign Joni as a delegate administrator, which would allow her to add and manage delegates or staff members on behalf of our provider. We can select add Joni to all service locations, but we want to select the security or work functions for Joni, or we can go to the last option where we can select the service locations to assign Joni to work on behalf of our providers. We can make her active at specific locations, and then we can also set her as a delegate administrator at a specific location. We can add her to another location and scroll down, and we can then assign her different work functions by selecting those work functions from the available functions list, using the arrow button to move it over to the selected functions list, and then that's going to add it up here to this service location box. You can see that we have added 2 security functions for Joni to work on behalf of our provider. So we scroll to the bottom of this page and we click Submit. You now have the Add Registered Delegate was successfully saved at the top of the page, and your registered delegate is now able to log in and work on behalf of the provider and the provider locations that have been assigned to this delegate or staff member. So at this point, we're going to log out at the top right here because we're done adding our delegates, and we're going to go back to our PowerPoint slides. Now let's look at a few examples on how our delegate assignments look for us. Remember the graphic from earlier in the lesson? Reviewing the details about these different delegate configurations is confusing at first, and a quick review of the complete picture will improve your understanding. Matching your organization's staff's structure needs with the best PRSS delegate settings is the goal here. Select the first set of delegate assignment choices, which would be to assign all service locations and security functions if you want this staff member or delegate to perform all staff functions for all service locations for this provider. And then you can also, remember, add them as a delegate administrator if you want this staff member or delegate to oversee other delegates assigned to your provider. Again, the idea is to match the delegate setting to how you want to deploy your staff to cover the provider enrollment and credentialing tasks. This graph does show 2 things to consider. Do you want a single staff member or delegate providing all available security functions and/or a delegate administrator that can assign and manage staff members or delegates for this provider, and who can also then provide all security functions? So as a delegate administrator, this staff member could create and add delegates to help with maintaining tasks broken out as security functions that you determine. That second selection that we had, which would be to assign the choices, assign all service locations and assign selected security functions. You would do this if you want this staff member or delegate to act across all provider service locations, but you want to select the security functions for them to work on behalf of a provider. This option allows the security functions or tasks to be limited to match staff specialty or organizational structure. It allows a larger office to split duties between multiple staff, such as front office and billing and administration. You would select the third set of delegate assignment choices, which would be assign service locations and assign security functions if you want this staff member or delegate to act across select provider service locations with selected security functions. Selecting the DA or Delegate Administrator checkbox will designate this staff member or delegate to manage all delegates for this provider's selected service location, so just at the service location. This option allows the security functions or tasks to be limited to match staff specialty or organizational structure across selected service locations. This choice does give staff managers the most varied choices to cover a variety of staffing needs. So again, the idea is to match the delegate setting to how you want to deploy your staff to cover the provider enrollment and credentialing tasks. This graph shows different variations using these settings. Do you need multiple staff or delegate specialties to divide credentialing tasks to match staff specializations or functional groupings? This third choice allows multiple delegates to manage specific groups of security functions across selected locations, giving managers the most flexible design on delegate functions across select locations. As a delegate administrator, this staff member could create and add delegates to help with maintaining tasks broken out as desired. This graph, this graphic shows a possible split of security functions across 3 staff members. So right here. Be sure to keep this variable in mind. It allows the delegate administrator security functions so they can act during staff shortages or turnover. So if you have your delegate administrator um, for a specific location, and you have one of your delegates that is out or needs some help, this delegate administrator can also work on behalf of that delegate that's not able to complete those functions. An authorized administrator is a group provider type that manages the service locations associated with the individual within a group. After the individual After the individual within a group's enrollment is approved, the authorized administrator may assign staff members or delegates to manage service locations assigned to the authorized administrator, but does not directly assign delegates to the individual within a group's account. The authorized administrator cannot change the authorized administrator. When assigning the authorized administrator during enrollment, which is accomplished in the PE Wizard, refer to the PE Wizard User Guide section 12.1. This image depicts the screen where the authorized administrator will be entered during enrollment. When assigning the authorized administrator in the provider portal after enrollment, you would refer to the provider portal user guide section 9.3.7 and section 9.3.74 for steps to add an authorized administrator if not added during enrollment. So this image depicts what it would look like. You would go under the affiliations tab and you would add the authorized administrator. This is through provider portal. In this next section, we're going to talk about managing delegate role assignments in the provider portal. So remember those delegates that are already working on your behalf in provider portal. You will be able to manage the manage delegate feature enables you to establish and maintain delegates who can perform select functions in the portal on your behalf. So those delegates who are already working on your behalf, you can manage those functions that they've been assigned. So we're going to go back into the training environment to see how these delegates are managed. So here we are logged back in as advanced telepsychiatry. We're going to go back in up to our navigation bar. We're going to click on that maintenance tab and we're going to just go down to manage delegates. Again, this brings us to our manage delegates, to our delegates information page. So we're going to scroll down and you're going to notice that we have a table down here with a list of delegates that are working on behalf of our provider at all the service locations. If I come up to the middle of the page here where it says service locations, I can click on to the right, there is a drop down arrow. I can click on another location and it's going to change our list of delegates down below in the table. Let's see if we can find a location that's going to show us a difference here. There we go. So we've now changed our delegates in the table below here. We have a couple of different options. We can move to different pages. We can also export to Excel or export to PDF down here so we can see this list of delegates. All right, so let's go back up and let's select our 3152 Halifax Road. There we go. So we're back to this list of delegates, and I want to change Jane Bond's security roles or security functions that she's working on behalf of our provider at this specific location. So I'm going to select Jane Bond, select her record in the table, double click, and that's going to open up the assigned delegate window. So I can now scroll down and I can see that Jane is active, working on behalf of the provider in several different locations. So when I scroll down in my box, I can see that she's actually a delegate administrator at all locations. And she's active at all locations. So I'm going to remove her as delegate administrator at the first location, which means I now have to go down and assign the available functions that I want her to work at that location. So I highlight the function and then I use the arrow in the middle to move that over. So you notice now Jane is still working on behalf of our provider at all the locations, but at the 1727 location at the top, she has been limited to the security or work functions that are assigned to her. So I'm going to scroll back down to the bottom and I'm going to click Save. So now I see again the ribbon at the top of the page that it says Assigned Delegate was successfully saved. So Jane in this delegate information table is still in an active status working on behalf of my provider. She is a delegate administrator, but she's not a delegate administrator at the first service location. So let's take Martha Bond that's below Jane. We're going to select Martha. We're going to double click on her record. We are going to, you cannot delete staff members or delegates from the system, but what you can do is make them inactive. So I can make Jane inactive at a service location when I scroll down, which means she would be active to work on behalf of our provider at other locations. She just wouldn't be active at this specific location. I can also make her inactive at the top of the box, which means if this is Martha. If Martha were to leave or take a leave of absence from our provider, we would just select this active checkbox at the top, scroll down at the bottom, and I will click Save. And what you'll notice is Martha Bond is no longer active working on behalf of our provider. And it doesn't matter which location I would select up here, you wouldn't find Martha active. But let's say Martha is going to come back. She's back from her leave of absence. I can come up to the to this row where it says that delegate status. So we're only seeing the active status. If I click on the filter button to the right, you notice I can now include inactive delegates. I can click the filter icon, and now you see I can find Martha. Let's see. Let's find Martha Bond here. There we go. Martha is now on our table. She is at an inactive status for our delegate and for this service location. So I'm going to select Martha's record again, double click. I can go to the top. I can click this active checkbox, which makes her active at all service locations. So we can assign her at any service location. But again, notice down here, I still have her as inactive at this 3152 location, which is why I couldn't find her a minute ago. I had to use the other filter. So I click Save here, and you're going to notice that Martha is now in an active status. So she is in an active status working for our provider, but when I scroll up and I notice, oops, that I am at that 3152, I have made her inactive at this specific service location. So she is active to work on behalf of our provider, but she is inactive at this specific service location. Now we're done managing our delegates, so we're going to go ahead and log out of the system here. For security purposes, we want to make sure when we step away from the computer or we're done in the system that we go ahead and log out. Now that we've shown you how to manage your delegates that are working on behalf of your provider, we did talk about when we add the registered delegate that we had a relationship code. So we're going to take a quick detour over to our login as a delegate. So we're going to log in as a delegate or a staff member, and I'm going to show you where that delegate would find the relationship code. So here we are logged in. When I select I'm on the switch provider page. So I'm logged in as my delegate on the switch provider page. If I click the provider portal, you're going to notice that I am, let's go back to the switch provider page. When I select a provider to work on behalf of and click submit here, you're going to notice that I am working, I have to select, a service location. Give it just a moment. All right, so you notice that I am a delegate for advanced telepsychiatry. That's what I'm logged in as, um, or that's the provider that I've selected to work on behalf of. When I go to my navigation menu and I click on that maintenance tab, and I go down to portal profile maintenance, what I'm going to see is that my username is Jane Bond. I am Jane. My last name is Bond. And whenever I go to the middle of this page and to the right, I see a relationship code. You will only see a relationship code on a delegates page. So a delegate will be the only one that will see this relationship code on their page when they go to maintenance and then portal profile maintenance. All right, so we're again going to log out here, go back to our slides. And now it's time to see what you recall. We have just a few questions to quiz you on the material that we just covered. So the first question, providers, MCOs, and ASOs can give portal access to their clerical or administrative staff. Is that true or false? And the answer is true. Question 2. A delegate administrator has access to all security functions, including the ability to add and maintain delegates. Is this true or false? And the answer to this is true. Question 3. When an unregistered delegate is added, the delegate has immediate access to the authorized portal functionality. Is this answer true or false? And the answer to this one is false. Remember that the delegate must follow instructions that are sent to their email to complete registration. And then our last question, 4. What information must a registered delegate supply in order to be added as a delegate to another account? And on this one, you will select all that apply. Remember, whenever we added the registered delegate, a small thin bar came up in the middle of the page. We had to add two things, and that was the last name and the relationship code. So, our course summary today was we explained the purpose of setting up delegate role assignments. We identified where to manage delegate information. And so, congratulations. You have completed Introduction to Provider and MCO Delegate Management, PRSS 118. Thank you for your attention and thank you for attending. You have a great day.